What's up, Esports Narrative Podcast listeners? Real quick before we get started, I want to read a couple of reviews that have been left on our iTunes or Apple Podcast page, and it's something I want to do more of as they come up and just highlight the audience and the viewership and how you guys are enjoying this. So the first one is from Toe Tagger. He says, "Great down-to-earth esports podcast. Just listened to the last episode. Even though it talked about Twitch, it weaves in the esports aspect and made a subtle connection that streaming can be part of the esports world as well. I definitely fully believe that. I believe that esports is not just the tournaments and the prizes and the hype and the excitement of, big events. I believe that just like traditional sports, esports, it can come in many shapes and sizes, and that comes in the form of streaming. And even if it's competitive or not really competitive, if they're just playing on ladder or ranked matches, to me, that is esports. And esports, when you think of it in that regard, is much bigger than we originally thought. So thank you, Toe Tagger. Really appreciate the rating and the review. Next one is from JL Fin 0. He says, "Great content, great quality. Spencer's narrating style and technique for explaining shines in this podcast. He fires with quick questions and manages to get some notable interviews in the gaming industry." Thank you. Super appreciate that. I am always on the hunt to get better and better guests, or I should say more well-known guests, to bring you guys the best quality esports podcast that I can and bring you insightful interviews, ask insightful questions, and kind of get a take on some things that you maybe have not heard before. So I really appreciate that, and I will continue to get the best guests possible that I can. And I appreciate everyone listening. Couldn't do this without your support and your viewership. It really means a lot to me. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in there. What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome to episode 49 of the Esports Narrative. I am your host, Spencer Alessi. This is the podcast that's all about the exploration of competitive video gaming and the passionate communities that make it so exciting. Super excited to have Wheels, aka TD Wheelie, Wheels.2k, joining me on the show this time. Super excited. He's maybe you know, maybe you don't if you look into his background, but he's actually an award-winning photographer, which I'm sure he's pretty humble about. But he's also a video editor at Splyce, and he is the host of a new podcast that he's just created called Behind the Cut Podcast. So we'll talk about that on the show. But Wheels, man, thanks for joining me tonight. I'm super excited to chat it up.
Dude, thank you for having me. I'm really happy. I'm really happy to be here. I'm not gonna lie.
Awesome. Well, once I saw you were putting stuff out there, we were engaging a little bit on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, what's this? What's he coming up with? And I'm super excited to see what you're doing. And I think it's a little underserved in some regards of like talking to people who are creating the content around esports is something that's super cool to kind of get a behind the scenes look at, their life and what they're doing and how they get into it. So I'm super excited to hear more about that, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And I'm just super excited to see what you're doing with that. So congrats on that and starting that, and I'm glad we can chop it up a little bit.
Dude, thank you. It's been fun to start all these things that I've slowly been starting for 2018, because for some reason 2017 was kind of my off year, I would say, when it comes to creating content and like being kind of like not in the spotlight per se, but like more assertive of like what I'm doing, basically starting my own stuff again. So it's been fun being able to start stuff and actually see it through to where I'm actually happy to put it out.
Awesome. So I'd like to get a little bit of your background, just to like figure you out a little bit of like where you came from and what your background is. Obviously, I looked into you a little bit. You've done a lot of photo work, and you've got the video background as well. But I'm curious, what came first? Was it photo and then video? And like, what did that look like when you were, getting into this creation process?
Okay, so my background when it comes to like what my story is, so Uh, uh, I have a, I was a photographer first, and then moved into video afterwards. So when I graduated high school, I didn't know what I was going to do. I took 6 months off of going to college. And so during that 6 months, or during that summer, actually, I decided to buy a camera. And I was like, okay, I want to buy this camera. I want to see what I can do. And within the first shoot, or not shoot, I used to be in the whole music industry or the music side of photography and video and stuff. So that's my start was with that. So shot a lot of concerts. I shot a lot of shows. Went to a couple festivals here and there, and then I really enjoyed doing the photography side of things. So I was actually looking for schools, not just a community college, but I was looking for a trade school because when it comes to being a photographer or any of the niche jobs, you really don't need to have a college degree. So I was like, I need to find something to where I can actually learn how to be a photographer. So I found a school called Hallmark Institute of Photography. It's in Turners Falls, Massachusetts. It's about 6 or 7 hours away from me. And so I went there, and it was a 10-month program, and it was a 40-hour week school. I was doing photography from 8 in the morning to 5 o'clock at night, just like what a normal job would be. And then from there, I decided to go ahead and just I learned everything at that school. I did still lifes, I did portraits, I did like photo composites, and just I learned every aspect of photography I could to see where I would end up. Uh, After school, I got a job as a high school portrait photographer, about 45 minutes south of where the school was located. Then did that for about 6 months. Then right after that would be when I got a job at this prestigious photography studio where it would be where I would work for like a year and a half. And the person I learned from was an award like world class photographer. She had a portrait studio, shot a lot of kids, a lot of families and stuff like that. And I was just the studio manager running everything, also doing sales as well. And I was shooting on the side. I was still shooting. She would allow me to use the studio for whatever I wanted. It was great. So I was able to learn, and she taught me a lot when it came to photography, when it came to posing, when it came to sales, when it came to being on the actual business side. But unfortunately, it was only me and her. So it was kind of like if she got mad at me, it's not like I could go hide and talk to other coworkers. It was she
Right.
was got mad at me. So it was getting to the point where I needed to find something new. And so my friends actually created a uh, production company in Richmond that would focus around shooting music videos for bands. They asked me to come on and start doing video. And I was like, sure, why not? I kind of know how to do video. I mean, I'll just go ahead and just figure it out. But yeah, so from the portrait studio to the video side, then I did that for a little bit. And then around like 4 or 5 months after that, things were looking like it wasn't, I wouldn't say bad, but let's just say it wasn't like I like shooting the bands and stuff. I was great friends with the guy, but it wasn't like I wasn't really making any money. And also
Wasn't paying the bills.
it wasn't paying the bills. Yeah, that's basically what it was. And but also at the time they were moving from Richmond, Virginia to LA, and I didn't know if I wanted to take the risk. But also at the same time, they did let me go. So just to save a little bit of money, and they wouldn't have to pay me as much when they did move to LA. Don't get me wrong, I'm still friends with them. I love them to death. I'm actually kind of happy they let me go because I was able to go do my own thing, which I did for the next, I would say, year. I started doing my own music videos, started doing my own video work. When it came down to it, was still doing photos on the side. That's where I strive, is the photography side rather than video. And then from there, I was actually looking up the whole what esports actually is, and I was actually playing CS:GO a lot, and I was also a League of Legends fan, and I already kind of knew about like TSM, like all the big orgs and stuff, and so I was like, you know what, I want to kind of like trying to figure my way into this. And so I met a streamer. His name is Jason R. He's a big CS:GO guy now. We know each other. He loves me. I love him. He is the one who actually got me introduced to Splyce. He So Splyce actually picked up his team, his Threes Up team, at the time, and I didn't know what Splyce was. I didn't know who they were, and
So what
so
year was this? What
this
year was
was
this when you like found out about esports and then this all started to happen?
this was 2016 is when that all
Okay, cool.
started. It actually
Cool.
around 2 years ago is when my whole esports career actually started. So then when it came down to it, they were looking for a video editor, and I was like, oh, I know how to edit videos. I kind of know about video games, and to my knowledge, they were looking for CS:GO editor and a bunch of other bunch of other things. So what I did was I came on, interned for a little bit, and then eventually they brought me on full time. So it was really awesome to be able to go from pretty much one to the next when it came down to it. And actually, to show them that I was actually committed to doing work, I actually flew myself out to DreamHack Austin, which was my first event with the company. And I got a press pass and everything. And actually that event, Summit 1G, was the sub for us. And so that was his infamous Molly. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
With
Yep.
Summit Molly himself.
Yeah,
that was
train on an inside bomb. Yeah, inner bomb site. Yeah, I
Yep.
remember.
That was with us. So I was there shooting. Shot the CS:GO guys. Shot the two Smash players that we had, and I got to meet Marty, who is the co-owner. I have to say, a co-owner of Splyce. So and then after that, I was like, okay, I'll just continue with Splyce, and then it just pretty much went from there.
Yeah, that's cool. And Marty was one of the first, I think, 5 guests on this show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a really funny story. I just, out of the blue emailed him or DM'd or something like that. I think it was email. And he got back to me. He's like, yeah, I'll totally do it. Coordinate with, so-and-so, and, we'll find a time and make it work. And he was super gracious to spend some time with me and talk about esports. And at that point I had done, like 4 episodes, and he was super humble enough to like just come on the show, knowing that there would be very few people listening at the onset. So super grateful for him to kind of come on the show, and gives me some notoriety to say I had Marty on, from Splyce on the show. It's like really cool to be able to say. And it was super cool to chat with him. He's a super cool guy, like really down to earth. And I'm sure you can share that as well. But it was nice to have him on the show as well.
Oh yeah, dude, Marty is a great boss. I absolutely love it. He's very passionate about esports, and he's very passionate about growing the scene. And actually, that's something Marty does. Is he wants to he'll do a lot of conferences. He's actually, at the time of the recording, he's actually at the esports bar, which is in France, I believe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was doing a talk over there. He loves doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's cool to see someone not only concerned with the growth of their own team and organization, but also really wanting to, take people along with him. And from everyone that I've talked to that's had engagements with him or worked with him or for him, have all said the same thing, is that like this guy, not only cares about himself and his growth of the company, but the people around him he works with, which is really cool.
Oh yeah, it's I love it. I love it at Splyce. It's awesome. I'm actually currently working out of the offices, and it's been forever since I've worked out of an office, but it's awesome to go to work, and then being able to after work, play video games and such with your coworkers. Like we'll play League almost nightly, and it's just
I see you guys playing. What was it, Tekken? What were you guys playing, Shidosha?
Oh yeah. Shidosha was streaming. So Shidosha was streaming today, and he does that now. He'll just stream from the office because just randomly. And so I was waiting for a video to render out, and I was like, "Yo, man, tag me in." So it was like, "All right, you ready?"
Street Fighter, right?
No, it was Tekken. It was.
Oh, it was Tekken. Okay,
yeah. He was like, "Oh, really? You want to play?" I was like, "Yeah, but I haven't played Tekken in God knows how long." I was just random. I was like, "Can I have a character that I can just randomly push buttons?" I got my ass whooped at least, I think, 3 times, and then on that 4th time, I was like, I need to win, or I look bad. And because it was live in front of his audience, and I was happy that he allowed me to do it, and he was just laughing and enjoying it. And so what I did was I was a guy I was fighting was up 2-0. It was the first of three. And I was like, okay, when I got my first one, I was like, okay, great. This is going to be awesome. Then then I got my second one. I was like, yo, am I about to reverse sweep this guy? And at the end, I was like, yo, this is amazing. I cannot believe this happened. But what you don't see is me losing really badly right before that. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, that's the beauty of working in esports and the video games is like I don't know any other company that I was able to play video games like just during the day, like just randomly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of work I have to do, and when it comes down to it, just taking that like 15-minute break and just playing video games is awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's the balance that I hear from people that I talk to in esports is the same thing goes with the 2K guys that I'm talking to is like they'll be hustling and working hard and working long hours, but during their lunch break or something they'll sit down for an hour or half hour or whatever and play a couple games and it's super. I think it's cool. I think it's a unique part of the industry and working in it.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's definitely great. It's definitely a niche market too. I'm not gonna lie. When it comes down to it, you actually really have to be creative because it's still more in the grassroots kind of stages when it comes down to it, and you have to be creative when it comes to like creating content, especially because these are guys that play video games for a living, and they're not used to going outside. Or excuse me, I don't want to speak for all of them. Let's just say they play video games for 8 hours a day inside. Like pretty much out of their bedroom or within a house. So when it comes down to it is they're not used to being in the limelight yet. So obviously we have to like work around that. And so, but we're trying to get them. And there's a couple of them that are like really, really want to be in front of the cameras a lot. And it's just been awesome to work with those. We're trying to work with those other guys, trying to get them more in the spotlight and trying to work with that.
So let's set the stage a little bit. I want to talk about, video content a little bit in deeper depth, but set the stage a little bit for us as far as why you think esports is exploding right now.
Esports, when it comes down to it, are you talking about the content side or are you talking about the actual...
Just as an industry, right? So you've been in it the last few years. You've seen the transformation just in the past 2 years has probably been pretty cool to see from your perspective. I'm just curious on like why you think, it's becoming bigger, there's more investment coming in. Like, why do you think these things are kind of happening and the industry is kind of exploding right now?
Well, when you look at it, like what's every 12-year-old guy's dream? To play video games for a living or to do like just basically just to play, like just have a cool job is really what it comes down to. What's a cooler job than playing video games for a living and getting paid? Like actually paid to do it. It's just unbelievable. And what it comes down to it is the fact that, I mean, you have a lot of these investors like coming in, like a lot of sports investors. When you look at it, a lot of people aren't actually watching TV anymore. I mean, obviously for the big game, you're going to have a lot of people watch it. But when it comes down to it, no one's watching a baseball, like actual baseball like games like on the regular unless you're like absolutely dedicated to that team and you're going to watch every single game and you're going to have that MLB package. But what it comes down to is a lot of people aren't sports or don't really watch TV that much. And so Twitch, and when it comes down to it, is esports and Twitch actually go side by side. And because a lot more people are watching streams on their computer rather than watching TV because it's a cheaper option. And TV is kind of expensive when you're first starting out, especially in your college career. But then also all these esports, there's a lot of them in colleges now. There's a lot when it comes down to it is it's a lot more exposure than it was a couple of years ago, especially for it to be actually on TV. But it's also just trying to get kids excited and be not, I wouldn't say creative, but it's just like, look, if you're passionate about something, you can actually go out and make money doing it, especially when it comes down to video games. When you're like one of your top level like pros, like you can make some real money. And a lot of parents are like, oh, okay, I'll definitely support you because I'm seeing it on TV. There's a lot more exposure when it comes down to it. And it's just, especially people like Rick Fox, Like I love what he's doing over at Echo Fox. It is amazing, and he is very passionate. He is very in front of the camera when it comes down to it. He's educating all these like people who aren't like who kind of want to like bring esports down or talk bad about it, but he's showing them. He's like, look, like the reason why I got in this is just for my kids. Like when it comes out, it's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and he's really seems like obviously he's got the franchise experience, right? Coming from the Lakers and being in that ecosystem and having the relationships he has with, executives and, big time people. He's got those resources to bring them into their organization and kind of create that franchise as opposed to just kind of an organization as you would, typically call it. And it's going to be exciting to see kind of what happens over even just the next few years, in terms of the organizations and the leagues and things like that. So it's really going to be definitely interesting to see. And one of the things I wanted to mention to talk about next was you had a conversation with Chris Bett, and he mentioned that every project you do should be a little bit better than the last one you do. Every time you go out and you do a shoot or you create something, should be a little bit better than the last. I want to follow that up and say, what if it's not? What if you create something and you think it sucks? Like, how do you personally handle that? And what would your advice be to someone who's struggling with that? Like, do you put it out anyways? Do you, just leave it in an archive? Like, how do you handle things when you create them and they're not quite up to where you would hope they were or expect them to be? How do you handle that? And how do you advise other people, in that same situation?
Well, when it comes down to it is you have to look at it as one, it's your own piece of work. And you have to, if you honestly believe that is that's your next best work, then definitely roll with it. But if you look at it and after watching one project and then you go to the next and you're just like, oh man, like I really dropped the ball. I can't put this out. Honestly, just remake it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. This the beauty of digital is people have to learn how to remake a project. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had to redo a project because it wasn't working how I originally intended. And you just have to get over the barrier of the fact that if you want to have that mindset of trying to put out the next, like you're like better than the last, then you really have to try to learn how you did that one project and then try to take it a step further for the next project. Granted, just depends on what kind of videos you're doing, because if you're doing docs and stuff, like that you could see a growth in. But if you're going from like a documentary into making a hype video into like doing all these other stuff like I do pretty much on the regular, then like obviously a documentary is going to be a little bit better than a hype video sometimes. But you just have to get past it. And honestly, like I love that comment, what that Chris said. But that comment, I believe it was geared more towards the people that are just starting. And what it comes down to it is with me or anyone almost at my level is the fact that, yeah, we're going to drop the ball sometimes. Like we're going to put out a piece of content that we're not satisfied with, but someone somewhere is going to like that. And as long as, I don't know if you've heard that I have a 90% rule. It's the 90-10 rule. The rule kind of helps the factor out where it's like, I want to make sure this project is 90% done before I put it out. Just because the last 10% is just nitpicking. And if you keep nitpicking at something, you'll never put something out. So as long as you firmly believe that something is 90% done, just put it out. It doesn't matter. Even if someone's like, oh man, that video sucked, or if like you're going to have hate. Obviously, people are going to hate on it sometimes. You're going to have someone be like, I don't like that, or what it comes down to it is just like, look, you're going to have a lot more support than you are going to have then you're going to have haters. When I first started the podcast, my idea was just, you know what, I'm just going to put something out. I don't care as long as the audio sounded fine And as long as I had some decent guest on, that's just what it came down to. I wanted to put something out, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna just put it out. And so that's what I've done every single time. Obviously, I've learned how to get better over time, but it's just the initial of you're gonna be your roadblock when it comes down to
Yeah.
content. Is if you're not, I don't like the term creating every day. I hate that term. I hate that because that limits you to where you're going to put work out that's 30% done. But if you're honestly creating work and you honestly love it, then put it out. That's just what it comes down to.
So what's better in your terms? And I'm curious if it's kind of a trick question, but kind of not. What's better from your perspective, the speed at which you put out work and the sheer like volume and putting out work and just keep rolling and putting out stuff, not necessarily maybe every day or whatever, but just the speed of putting out work and regularly putting stuff out there, or kind of like you said, nitpicking a little bit and being a little bit more detailed and putting out less, but it being more refined or more scrutinized by you. Like, what do you think is better?
I'm trying to pull it up right now. It's oh God. So you have to look at it as you, like with me, I had to put things out super quickly. But honestly, I would love the quality to it. And there is a triangle. It's the what is it? It's the cheap. What do you want? Cheap, fast, or perfect? I believe is what it is.
I got you. I follow you.
So you can only have those two.
Right.
And so something can either be cheap and fast. Something can either be cheap or good, or fast and. I think I got that right. I'm not sure. I can't remember it. I was trying to pull it up really quickly. But what it comes down.
I think I get the gist of you. I follow you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So, and that's what it comes down to is obviously you're going to want speed, but some things are going to take longer. And that's and being able to put that work in and having the time to put the work in. Like, don't get me wrong. I would love to sit there and edit a video for a month where I have 1 month to complete it. Like, it'd be an extremely big documentary. But at the end of the day, I don't have a month. When it comes down to it, it's pretty much me editing everything. So I have to decide, do I want to spend days on this video or do I want to spend hours? I've gotten to the point where I'm able to separate basically where it's a quicker workflow. Don't get me wrong, if I had the time, I would like color grade like mad crazy. I would audio adjust. All those things that are going to take you time, coloring, your audio, they're gonna take time. And honestly, at the end of the day, as long as it sounds good and it looks good, just like I said, I just put it out. And that's what I think is, and that's honestly what I think.
I'm pretty particular about the creators that I follow, I'll say, on the internet and on YouTube and things like that. One of the people that I follow who I really like his ethos is Casey Neistat. And he a lot of times will talk about, kind of the things we're talking about now is, the story is everything. And the equipment that you use shouldn't get in the way of telling the story. And he also talks about not really loving the things that he puts out. Like when he puts out content or when he puts out a video, he'll oftentimes say like he doesn't really love the piece of work that he puts out. And that speaks to kind of what we're talking about here is like you're putting out content that you are happy with, but a lot of times the people that I've talked to and by seeing what Casey talks about is like a lot of times these people who are creating these pieces of work don't really love, what they're putting out because they always see where there's room for improvement. I'm curious what you think about that as far as like an ethos or like a mindset.
Well, we'll start with Casey's thing. And yeah, I've heard him say it a couple times where sometimes he doesn't like what he's putting out, but everyone loves it. That's only because that was only when he was doing the vlog. and he had to do the vlog daily because he told himself he had to do the vlog daily. And he actually got into a more of a routine, and the vlog started looking more and more, I wouldn't say not scripted, but the fact of the matter is it looked where it's just like, okay, we're going to do one, like he's going to do a video segment here, and then it's going to go into audio with B-roll, and then it's going to go into that. It's very predictable. Yeah, is what it comes down to it. And so obviously when that whole goes back to creating every day, is if he set a goal for himself was to put something out every day. And so that's where it's going to suffer, is like, I'm not 100% sure if I should put this out, but obviously he's going to have to put it out because that is what he said. I think one of the greatest thing he did was when he said, I'm stopping the podcast, or not podcast, I'm stopping the vlog. And that's just what, and like, look, he was like, yeah, I'm stopping the vlog. It's becoming too much. It's becoming more routine. I don't like it anymore. I've gotten to the point to where I want to actually take my time on projects. Granted, he started the vlog back up every now and then, but he's doing more stuff that he enjoys. Now, when it comes to actually being a creator yourself, and you need to put work out, if you like I've been saying, if you're not satisfied with what you're putting out, and it actually goes back to that 90% rule, it is the fact that I think if you have to redo something, if you need to take your time on something, or if you actually have to go reshoot, I won't tell you how many times I've had to reshoot. And I've actually wanted to reshoot myself, not with my clients, but when I told the clients, I honestly have told one client one time that I lost all the photos and such, only because they were so bad. And I did not want to show them what I could do. So just being able to have that whole where you can remake something, or if you have the time to be able to put out a polished item, then that's just how it's going to have to go. And when you're putting out work, it's just, it all, at the end of the day, you're going to be the one you're trying to satisfy. Obviously you're trying to satisfy everyone else, but what it comes down to is, as long as you're satisfying yourself, when it's being creative, when it's being a photographer, when it's being a videographer, at the end of the day, it all comes down to, as long as you're satisfied with what you're putting out, then who cares what everyone else says?
Exactly. And it's your loss, right? Like, meaning like, if you put out work and it kind of flops or doesn't get the reception that you're hoping, like, that's your L. That's not anybody else's. And that's something that, it's not, I don't know the right word for it, but it's not something that will, destroy your, reputation. If you put out work that's, not up to your standards, really, it's like, that's your thing. And you have to be you have to have the self-awareness and kind of thick skin, I guess, like you're alluding to, of just being okay with what you're putting out, and just having that thick skin to kind of deal with the negativity and be like really at least proud of yourself for what you've created, because it's something that you created with your own mind, hands, and skill, and that's something to be proud of, no matter what the reception gets, of the content.
Right. And actually, the other thing is, it depends on the kind of work that you're trying to show to the public when it becomes yourself. Because if you're working for companies, or if you're working for a client per se, sometimes you're not going to be able to shoot unless you own a Red or you own an expensive camera. You're not going to be able to, if you shoot one day on a Red, you're going to go to a client's going to hire you, but then they're not going to have the budget for that Red. And so you're going to have to shoot with a DSLR or a lower camera. And that's when you have to educate that person and say, look, it's not going to look like this because you don't have the budget for this, but honestly, it's going to be good work. And that's actually happened to me several times when it comes to, there's a lot of photo shoots that a lot of people don't see, and they're decent work, but when it came down to it, is it wasn't like that next step, or it wasn't as in a, like, I didn't feel like that was my best work at that time, but the client loved it. I got paid for it. And that's just what it came down to.
So changing gears a little bit, I want to dig into a little bit about kind of the popularity of what's, I guess, being known as the docu-series or, the esports documentary type content. And in one of your episodes, I think it was maybe the first one, you were talking about with your guest about the esports content being less serious or having a little bit less formality to it, of kind of the dramatic music and like the slow-mo work and stuff like that. And I'm obviously elaborating on what you were talking about, but
Mhm.
I think the question I want, or the thing I want to dig into, is like, how do you see like the current state of esports video content right now? Like, what is it doing well right now? Like, what are people doing well right now? And then where do you see kind of like some places where you think the content can go to make it either more engaging or more enjoyable for people to watch?
Well, actually, currently at the state right now, it's actually awesome. It's actually amazing. You got TSM. I believe Fnatic's still doing it. You have Team Liquid. You have a bunch of all these other series that are doing the documentary. 100 Thieves. There we go. 100 Thieves. I'll throw them in there. I love watching it. And the thing is, the whole documentary is storytelling, and that's all it is the fact that if an esports team wants to tell their story, that's how they can tell it. And it doesn't cost that much money. And the fact is, the documentary series, usually the people live in that, or if you're doing a series, like a whole, like let's say League of Legends, everyone's going to live in that house. So obviously you're going to be able to bring a camera in there at least one day a week and do interviews, and you're going to be able to do all these other stuff. And so at the state of it is right now, this is February 13th, 2018. It's actually amazing because all these other teams that didn't do the documentary or the lifestyle pieces are actually starting to do that. They're hiring the people, the right people to start those series, or they're starting to do it. And it's just, where it is right now is absolutely amazing. It's obviously going to grow when it comes down to it. You're going to have, I don't want to compare the sports with esports. I hate that. I love the analogy when it comes down to it, but really esports is not sport at the end of the day. And that's what a lot of people say, is esports is not sports. And I agree with that statement, but when it comes to the competitive side, obviously they're both competitive and they're both like considered to be sports. But esports is its own niche. Again, it comes down to the people are pro gamers, and that's all they want to do. They want to be a pro gamer. They want to be the best, and that's what it is. Is and you have to be able to capture it in a niche way, and so to actually get it to the next step is the fact of, you're going to have to get these players, and you're going to have to be, let's throw Faker in there because everyone knows Faker. You're going to have to find your next Faker. You're going to have to find like your next LeBron James that everyone's talking about. ESPN's talking about, like Sports Center, and like all these other companies are like, need to hype it up. And when it comes down to it is, I believe the way to bring it to the next step is getting that when there's actually a TV show around esports. That's where I see it actually going into the next step, is when these guys are doing press conferences after their match. They're doing it some now, but when they actually do a real press conference with like a lot of reporters and a lot of other stuff to bring them into the limelight more, that's when it'll grow.
Now, I see the likes of Liquid and Optic, particularly two that stand out to me. Optic is I think on the forefront of some of this type of content. They have, their little, they had like a quiz kind of thing where that they played a sound from a video game and they had people like guess what it is. So they have little like mini series like that. And I think, I want to get your opinion on that first of all, but Liquid also, I think Hungry Box had like a little segment or a series where he did some sort of cooking thing or something like that. How do you feel about creating these teams or these organizations creating content that is not necessarily esports or video game related, but it's just purely entertainment value, like you said, it's a TV show. Like, how do you feel about these organizations creating content that's not necessarily esports or video game related?
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I will watch all of those. And that's what a lot more people are watching is the lifestyle pieces, and that's what they're called, is more, I would say, lifestyle clickbaity. I don't want to use the word BuzzFeed, but it's meant for
Gotcha.
a larger audience to look at. And actually I like it because what it does is it actually humanizes it humanizes the players. Where, like, obviously when you're talking about the optic and the whole sound, those guys, they're playing the sound of the game when it was Call of Duty, but they're playing different versions of it, like different iterations of the game. They're adding other games in there, and it really it will connect the general audience to esports or to that content. And that's when you can drive into the documentary. I love doing that. Like, those are my favorite videos to edit, to tell you the truth. I love doing docs and stuff, but when it comes down to like being the funny stuff or doing stuff to where it's more of an entertainment value, it's very, very good. And that's where a lot of teams, I feel like, are going to start doing a lot more of, because it does humanize I see TSM doing it a lot now. It really does humanize it, and it's just more entertaining, and actually people are actually watching those videos to the very end. And usually those videos about 5 to 10 minutes, where like a documentary doco style video is going to be your 15 to 30 minutes.
And one of the things I'm curious about too is the different mediums, right? So there's written word, there's spoken word, and then there's video. There's three essentially mediums of communication in media that you can create. I know that Marty is really bullish on written word. He's, talked about the podcast that, they do over there at Splyce. And of course, you guys do, a ton of video content as well. I'm curious how you feel about incorporating the other mediums that aren't necessarily under your penmanship, like writing or, even, podcasts, for example. Like, what other mediums do you think would benefit organizations to create more content? And how do you think that kind of looks, in the terms of what these teams are creating? Because, take, for example, the documentary. There might be an interview with someone who kind of breaks down a match or something like that, which if you had like a ghostwriter or something like that, could pull that out and kind of create some sort of written, piece from that. I'm curious how you feel like the other forms of communication can come into play to kind of enhance or supplement the content that these organizations are creating.
Well, what it comes down to it is, if you have the resources, if you have the resources to do the written word, spoken word, and video, then do it. To tell you the truth, I fully believe, especially with this year, is just put out as much stuff as possible. And obviously, you can have people that don't have time to watch a video, but they'll have time, like in the morning, to read something. They want to read an article, or an actual written piece. And actually, to tell you the truth, every team, especially in the esports scene, has a website. And tell you the truth, putting stuff on your website is honestly free. I don't see why you wouldn't have that written word. Obviously, you're gonna have to hire a writer to do something, but as long as the writer does good work, you'll have a lot. It'll drive more people to your website. Spoken word. When it comes to podcasts are pretty cheap to put out. All you need is a mic, a guest, and then that's what it comes out to. That's all you need. It's not that much to put out, and you'll reach a more broader audience the more places you try to put yourself. Obviously, you don't want to saturate it when it comes to where you don't want you don't want a written piece on the documentary, the doc, and a podcast. You don't want to like saturate it. You want to kind of spread it out. Especially, I love the fact that we're getting, especially over here, we're getting a lot more writers when it comes down to it, to do actual written pieces on the guys. And it's just honestly, it's easier. It's not easier to do, but again, it comes down to the fact of you're being able to reach a more of an audience.
And I'm curious too about, one of the things that I am looking to do, and like as someone who's creating this podcast and looking at different ways to storytell and innovate on different things, is like, how do you create content for the platform that you're creating on? Like, for example, podcasts, really good to have guests on and have back and forth conversations and Q&A and things like that. Whereas video is much more suitable to have, like you were talking about, the docuseries and documentary type content, the lifestyle content. And for written word, it's a different strategy. I'm curious from your perspective, like how you can make content for the specific to the platform and make it relatable to people who are consuming it. That, for example, I am not a big reader. Like, I don't read a whole lot of stuff. Like, it's for one reason or another, I would much rather prefer to listen to stuff. So I guess what I'm getting at is, like, how do we as creators continue to like make sure that we're creating for the platform that we're intending it to go on? You know what I mean?
No, I think I understand what you're talking about. Well, your video kind of style, your video type work is going to be where it's going to be edited. It's going to be edited down. It's going to have a lot of cuts in there, and it's going to be edited down from, I don't know, like 2 hour shoot to like maybe 10 minutes or something like that. And that's going to be your video type style. And that's just what it's going to be. You're going to cut out a lot of the stuff within it. And then when it comes down to written work, is the fact that you can I wouldn't say delete things, but you don't have to make it a long piece. You can write a paragraph and be absolutely fine. And for podcasts, I mean, it really is. That's all it is. This is an uncut, uncensored interview, sit down interview with a player or someone. And obviously, to try to separate them is to try to find the perfect spot for each. Is, I wouldn't say super hard to figure out, but it comes to the point of you're gonna figure it out. Obviously, like with my case, I'm doing my own podcast, yes, but I'm not podcast and video kind of go hand in hand. When it comes down to it, is you can edit it and you can do all the stuff to it, but when you learn audio, you're going to do your video work better because you're going to have better audio. So those kind of go hand in hand, and so they kind of all interweave, and it just comes down to, like, you have to just figure out what you love doing. If you love doing it, if you love speaking to people, but you don't want to be like on the face or be on camera like me, I can't be on camera. I've tried to act. I just can't do it. I'll tell you the truth. I cannot do it. It takes me about 4 or 5 takes to get something right. But
I remember seeing that like update video you did for Splyce, like Marty was away or out or something, and you did like the weekly update or something like that. It was on, and you were like, "Yeah, this is like the 10th time I'm recording this."
Oh yeah. So yeah, I did. I recorded that. I think it took me a couple hours to do. And to tell you the truth, like I said, Marty's better at it, and now we have this new guy, Shadosha, really good at it, and Shadosha is getting a little bit better when it comes down to it, but they're wanting to be in front of the camera. I want to have I want to say I don't want to be in the spotlight when it comes to being on camera, but I'll do audio all day. Like what we're doing right now. I'll honestly speak to you as long as you want me. It doesn't bother me one bit. But and so that's just what it is the fact that it took me, I think, 4 hours to complete from start to finish, and I just that's when I decided. I was like, look, I don't want to be in front of the camera at all.
Mm-hmm. And the moral of the story is just, having kind of introspective self-awareness to know what you're good at and what you're not, and what you're, aspiring to be, and realizing that, you might not be as charismatic or electrifying as some people. You might just be kind of like, kind of relaxed and laid back, and it's not, as entertaining to watch on video, which is perfectly fine. But I think the key is knowing your strengths and weaknesses and playing into those.
Right. And what it comes down to is I did it. Is the fact that I tried to do something and then I realized I'm not as good as I thought I was going to be. Like, don't get me wrong. That update that I did, or anything that I do video wise, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it like this. This is how I'm gonna say it. I prepare for it, but then when it comes down to actually doing it, that's when it gets like, oh, I can't do this, but I did it, and I could tell people that I did it and I tried, but then I realized I'm actually better behind the camera, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I realized some of the same things. Is I actually, like you, did a lot of photography work in early 2010s. I'll say like 2011 and on. I did a lot of photography work. I actually went into doing engagements and weddings, which was super stressful. And I too was kind of like the same thing. Like, I can be charismatic and exciting and things like that. I've done, a little bit of vlogging here and there, but I too sometimes feel like I'm a much better suited behind the lens and kind of documenting the moments and the experiences in some regards. Yeah. What I'm curious. This, we've been talking a lot about a lot of different themes here. We've talked about a lot of things that when you're putting out content, if you think it's not good and if you should put it out and that kind of thing. What lessons have you had to learn the hard way, like in your journey of video editing and photo work and kind of like just your career? What lessons have you kind of had to learn the hard way, if you can think of one thing or a couple things?
How long do we have? I could tell you, I have so many lessons that I've learned.
All right, start with like the whatever you think is maybe the most impactful lesson that people will get value from, of like one thing you've had to learn the hard way that was super, super like ROI positive for you.
Numbers. It's the numbers game that I've learned the most lesson with when it really comes down to it is until this year, I didn't get a lot of engagement. I didn't get really anything, but I was still putting out solid work. But I feel like a lot of these kids that are coming up and with social media is they want to have attention and they want it. Don't worry about that. You don't have to worry about that one bit. And that was the biggest thing, especially when I was younger, is I wanted to be famous. That was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be not in movies, but I wanted to be known for something. And I wanted to have the following. Obviously, I want to have the likes. And the biggest lesson that I had was the fact of I was trying to fake it for the longest time. I bought likes on Instagram back when you can buy people to like your photo. I did that. And at the end of the day, I wasn't satisfied. I knew what I was doing was bad. And it kind of had a fake kind of presence. But at the end of the day, as long as like you're satisfying yourself, don't worry about the numbers. Just don't worry about it. Gary Vee said it to a 12-year-old that was starting YouTube. He told him, he was like, look, don't worry about your numbers. Just put out work and people are going to love it. You're going to have that. And it's just absolutely amazing. The next lesson I learned is educate your clients when it comes to it. Don't be afraid to tell a client I wouldn't say can't do something, but you're not strong suited at it. Especially with these kids coming in, I guess for esports or any kind of creative kind of field, you're not going to have the knowledge of a 10-year-old person or someone who's been doing it for 10 plus years, but you have the I would say you have the passion to try to go out and try to learn that. Like, I don't know what a character animator does. I don't know how to do that, but I know people that do, and I'll hire them out. So don't be afraid to go try to learn something or try to educate your client, especially when it comes down to video work and being like, so this is what I think you need, or this is what you're after. and really being able to show them like, look, this is the this video would look so much better if we had this, or if we had where I'm able to hire and get a bigger budget. This is only for budgets, really. Is if I had an extra budget to get a better camera, or if I had an extra, because like whenever I ask the client like what they're after in the end or what they want, they'll show me stuff like people have shot on Reds or like expensive cameras. I'm like, look, I don't have a Red. You're going to have to rent it. So being able to educate your clients is another lesson I've learned along the way.
Nick, so what's the
go ahead.
What's the biggest mistake you've seen people make when it comes to creating, let's say video content specifically? Like what's the biggest, mistake or, gotcha that you've seen people make?
Honestly, to tell you the truth, I haven't seen anything. That's because what it comes down to it is, honestly, it comes down to nitpicking. Obviously, there's going to be stuff that I would want changed in the video, but a video is like a painting. I'm not going to go up to a famous artist or an artist and be like, I hate that. You should have put this stroke here. You should have put this on this side of the canvas. You should have had more depth. I'm not going to say that to an editor, or I'm not going to say that to someone trying to create something. And at the end of what is it? A video is like a work of art. You don't. It's whatever the artist creates, and that's what it is. We're all artists, and it all goes back to the satisfying yourself. And I mean, obviously, there's stuff that when it comes down to like audio, like videos at 30 FPS, I can't tell you how many times my eyes hurt when I put it, but but I don't watch that. I won't watch it. And if I know the person, I'll be like, I'll guide them like, hey, love that video, but what are your thoughts about doing this? And just try to get the ball rolling. Like, we're all a team. And I've actually learned that this year. That's another thing that I've learned is us creatives, we're all a team. We should be helping each other out and not pushing each other down. There's stuff in there that people could take away when it comes to when people are going to hate on me for. Is obviously we're all trying to go after either the same client or something like that. But honestly, as long as you're helping someone out, they're going to be like, the next project they're going to do, they're going to ask you to help them, and then vice versa. And that's the thing is, people need content. Clients need to have those creators, and a lot of companies now are realizing that they have to hire these people, and there's a lot of work to go around, to tell you the truth. And I'm not nervous about, like, if, like, say we're both shooting weddings, like, I'm gonna have my own specific wedding clients to shoot, and you're gonna have your own specific wedding clients to shoot, and that's just what it comes down to. It's just helping each other.
So what's your biggest goal? And in one word, what is standing between you and that super huge goal?
Am I allowed to curse on here?
Yeah, go for it.
Make shit. I'm sorry, it was 2 words, but just make shit. That's my honest goal. Is that's what it is for this year. And my goal for the rest of what I'm doing is just to make shit and learn as much as I can, and to be able to, like, not teach but educate people on just be like, I want to bring myself more, like, guiding these young people and just telling them just to go make shit. That's honestly, at the end of the day, just go make shit. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. As long as you love it, just put it out.
What would your advice be for, and you alluded to this to some extent, just a minute ago with, guiding people on their content, but what would be your advice for somebody who's listening right now who really loves the video production work? They love the documentaries. They want to be able to create that and work with a team to create that kind of stuff. What would be your advice for someone who's brand new, who wants to get into that, but maybe doesn't have the skills or the relationships or the connections, or maybe even the equipment yet to be able to do that? Like, what's your advice for them?
So if you have a camera, and as long as you have a camera, whether it be your phone, whether it be a DSLR, whether it be a C100 Mark II, if you want to be a creative and you're just starting out, my advice to you would be to find out what you want to do first. Obviously, if you want to start doing documentaries, you can do a documentary. You can do a doc easily. You want to know who your first person is going to be? It's going to be your dad. It's going to be a family member. Everyone has a story to tell. So you could be like, "Hey, can I shoot you for the day? What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow you around for the day just to practice." And that's the thing, is as long as they're willing to be in front of the camera, people do amazing stuff. Even going to like a big company, they're going to do amazing stuff, or they're going to have an amazing story, especially your grandfather. Especially ask him about how he was growing up in the 50s or something like that, 50s or 60s. Like, ask him about that. He's going to have stories. And you don't need, I mean, obviously you're going to want B-roll and stuff, but as long as you're shooting something, that's the best way to do it. And when it comes down to it, is that's when you're going to figure out if you're good at it or not, or if you're good at getting talking to people, or if you're good at actually editing the docs and stuff. That's when, like, it just, people want to be handheld. And when it comes down to it, is I get asked all the time, "Hey, how do I get started? How do I get started?" I'll tell them this. And like, I always ask them, like, what do you want to get started in? And I'll give them a piece of advice. And that's what it comes down to. It is, if you want to be a photographer, take a photo of your dad or your parents. I'm sorry, I don't want to say dad just in case someone doesn't have a dad out there, but take some, everyone knows someone. Just go take a photo of them. You're going to just keep on using them. Be like, "Hey, I want to keep on taking photos of you. I want to get better." And that's when you'll learn if you want to be a photographer, if you want to be a videographer, if you want to be a documentary doc, go out and just create a documentary yourself. As long as you have a camera, even a phone, you can. My best advice, and everyone asks, like, how do I get better at audio, or how do I get better audio in my docs? You can go on Amazon right now and buy a $13 lavalier that will plug straight into your phone. And as long as you have a clap in there, and you can record the audio and video where you can line up the audio, you'll have awesome audio, to tell you the truth. And that's how we actually used to do it at Splyce for the longest time, because we had a $13 lavalier, because we couldn't afford a $700 Sennheiser's. And so that's what it comes down to being a creative, is you have to figure out creative ways to make something, especially if you're just getting started, or or even if you've been in it a while. Like, that's what separates a creative from just a normal person.
Along the same lines is, let's say you're getting into the scene more, you're producing some work, you're developing your portfolio. Now you want to go in and maybe work for a team, or you're kind of pitching people to create, content for them. Should you work for free? And what is your opinion on that?
Comes down to value, how much you value yourself. If we're talking esports, that's how I started out. I was an intern, but I showed them what I could do, and then I did get paid for it. Especially when the budget comes in. But I wouldn't say, as of right now, especially if we're talking just esports, there shouldn't be free without getting something out of it in return. So if someone is trying to work for free, like voluntary status, as long as you're trying to put that in your resume to go try to work for someone else, then yeah, sure, go ahead. But when you start, that's when clients will start rolling over you, is if you do stuff for free over and over again without anything in return. And as long as you have it in there where it's like, oh, I can leave at any time, then you might as well. But I mean, that's honestly how I got my start, is I worked for free for a good while. I won't tell you how long, just that's all personal. But I did start for free. But at the same time, I was working on my own stuff, my own personal stuff when it came down to video, photos, and actually work on another job. And so, but I was using the knowledge that I was getting from working voluntary to apply to myself. So I was getting something in return. I was able to pick brains with a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, it all comes down to what you value yourself as, or if you're just getting started. Don't undervalue yourself. Don't undersell yourself. Undersell yourself. So that's just, I mean, it just depends on, it just depends. It's a case by case basis when it comes down to.
So you just recently started the Behind the Cut podcast. So tell me, what was the idea behind this, and what was kind of your motivation for starting this? And just tell us, what this is kind of all about, like what it actually is that you're doing on this podcast.
So Behind the Cut started out actually an idea in my head where I was going to do a video series called Behind the Cut, where after video comes out, I would explain my thought process behind the cut. And I'm still going to do that. Don't get me wrong. Whenever I start putting stuff out myself, I will start do that. But the podcast was started just so I could talk to creatives. And at that same time, I'm digesting what they're saying and being inspired to go out and create something. And I wanted to have a platform for creatives to come on to where they wouldn't want to go inspire themselves, and they want to inspire people who are just starting, people who've been in it for 10 years, people who've been in it forever. And that's my one goal, is just to try to be not an inspiration, but just to go out, and as long as someone tells me that, as long as they're making stuff, that's just, at the end of the day, I'm just happy. I'm just happy. And that was the goal starting out. Obviously the podcast is super young and I'm having a lot of esports guests on it, but eventually I'm breaking out of the actual esports space and actually having other guests on that aren't a part of the esports scene. But that's where I've come from. Is these last 2 years, I have really met a lot of esports people, but all those guys are creatives when it comes down to it, because of the fact that it is still grassroots, or they're just starting out, or they've been in a while. And so the goal of the podcast is to talk with people and either inspire myself or just to have people be inspired by it. I honestly don't know where the podcast is going to go, but I have an idea. I'll just figure it out. Like, I'm just going to just talk to people and just hopefully people listen. That's all. Honestly, that's just it.
I think there's value in candid conversation. It's kind of like, looking behind the curtain, so to speak, and kind of seeing what people are up to when it's just kind of a carefree, relaxed conversation,
Yeah. And it really opens up someone, especially if they've never done it before. It really opens up someone. And honestly, it just shows what kind of person they are if it is a relaxed conversation and not like a sit down interview. And that's what I've always wanted it to not be, as I didn't want it to be an interview. I wanted it to be where they came on, I kind of knew about them, but really I wanted to just dive deeper on who they were, or just some of the past stories. And I love listening to what people have to say. And honestly, I felt more creative, not only creative, but I've also been inspired to go out and do stuff from what they've told me.
Yeah, it's really cool because, like you said, it's the way that you've formulated it is just a candid conversation and non-scripted, and you can tell it's just two people kind of chalking it up and really just having a relaxed conversation, which I think is really nice to see in a podcast, because a lot of times some of the content that I listen to is more or less more heavily produced and whatnot, so it's kind of nice to have that contrast.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Nerdist, but I love that format where it's like he just hits record and just goes, and he'll figure it out. And that's Chris Hardwick. I love Chris Hardwick. And that's what I wanted the podcast to be, is just a candid conversation. Obviously I have notes next to me where, just in case I need something to go back to, I'll have that. But again, it's just, I love the conversation. I just love talking with people. It's basically just like going out and grabbing a cup of coffee with someone and just having a microphone there. I love it.
Yeah, it's one of the motivations I had as well for this podcast was to talk to people who are in the industry and doing their thing and creating content or running teams or whatever it is that they're doing. I think it's a super interesting industry, and it's an opportunity to kind of let people tell their story and tell about their background and what they're doing and why they're doing it. So it's really cool to be able to talk to people like you and everybody else. And yeah, I super appreciate you coming on, and it's been fun to talk it up and chop it up. So what I mean to say is that I too have kind of the same motivation of like talking it up with people and learning about esports and becoming more experienced in what's going on and what's happening in the space. And it's super cool to talk to people about all that stuff.
Dude, I mean, honestly, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking time and hearing your perspective about content creation and the nuances, I'll say, of the content creation process and things like that. I think will be super valuable for people to hear. And lastly, if you have any shout outs, the floor is yours. Tell people where they can connect with you and where they can find whatever it is you're doing. Shout outs, whatever. The floor is yours.
First, I want to shout out Splyce, especially without them, like I wouldn't have a job or wouldn't be living in New York right now. So first off, thank you. Shout out to them. I guess follow them everywhere. Splyce at Splyce. Secondly, would be the podcast that I did start, which is called Behind the Cut, and so I guess you'll find it on iTunes wherever podcasts are. It's just called Behind the Cut. And then just, I guess, follow me on socials if you want to keep up with what I'm up to. I've been posting a lot more lately, try to post a lot more engaging stuff, a lot of stuff I've been working on, and a lot of behind the scenes stuff.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me tonight, Wheels. It's been super fun. And for everyone listening, if you've made it this far, definitely check out what Splyce is up to. It's my favorite organization personally. I have a sense of connection with what Marty and what you guys are doing over their Wheels, and the things that you guys believe in and are creating and doing really resonates with me. So shout out to you guys for doing it the way you are doing it. And for everyone listening in, like I said, if you made it this far, go check them out. If you haven't been following Splyce's content, this is one of the main guys behind it. So be sure to see what they're up to. Follow them, give them some of your attention. If you like it, you'll be better off for it. If not, go on your way. Who cares? Well, whatever. If you don't like it, buzz off. But I super appreciate you, Wheels, coming on the show, and keep doing what you're doing and creating. And I for one will definitely be watching and listening, so to speak. So kudos to you and congrats on 2017, and wish you all the best and success going forward in 2018, my man.
Dude, thank you so much.
And with that, just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Hey guys, real quick before you go, I just want to say thanks for listening and supporting the show. It really means a lot to me that you like it, and I hope that if you found some value from this podcast, that you'll share it on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook, anywhere that you have a social media presence. I would love it if you would just share it with 3 to 4 people that might be interested in it. It would absolutely mean the world to me. It would help me get my name out there, help me get the podcast out there. I do this solely for the love of esports and for the love of getting to know people and hearing the stories of esports that I think are so awesome. So please, if you got value from this, if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone who you think might like it. And with that, I will see you next time. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it.